BG podcast number 66, Wednesday evening at 8:30. Lots to talk about. We've got 33 of you waiting in the chat, waiting for this stream to stop. Evening to everyone, evening to all the usual faces, evening to all the newcomers. Thanks for joining in. 13 of you already click the thumbs up button. Please hit that nice and early, which will allow this to get a bit more traction and more people to join as we continue to go live. Pleased to say that I'm already joined on the panel by Irish Tom and by Jay. Understand that Jet is going to join shortly. So, yeah, should have a relatively good panel tonight. And in terms of topics of conversation, a huge amount to discuss. We're going to start by looking back at last week's boxing, the Matchroom Next Gen card. We're then going to look at some of the news in boxing. The ITV Super 8 tournament gets started. A lot of talk about the different broadcaster announcements. AJ versus Pulev, Wilder versus Ortiz, Joyce versus Lewison. Of course, we'll do a preview of next week's boxing as well. So lots to discuss, guys. Sport is buzzing. So without further ado, let's begin by bringing in the inimitable...
Hello, can you hear me?
Loud and clear, mate. Loud and clear. Iris, did you watch the Next Gen card?
No.
No? Okay. It was probably a fairly poor idea of me to come to you first.
I saw a few little highlights of some.
Okay. Any fighters particularly catching your eye out of that sort of group?
No, I think people said the Joe Cardina one was the most impressive, but any of the ones I saw, I thought were average. Like I like Ted Cheeseman. I think he's good, but the guy he fought was, you know, what are you going to do with that? It's hard to chalk it up as a good performance from Ted Cheeseman when the guy is so poor. But Lawrence Okoli looked like warmed up dog shit. You know, he needs to be brought along extremely slowly because he is, he's very basic and makes shitloads of mistakes. So they can't step him up into even English. You know, even English to British level, I think he'll get found out, you know, even in the next 2 years. He might have enough power to win one, but, you know, he's liable to get caught out very soon. So I don't think I saw the Buatsi performance, but, you know, just all in all, those shows are, I just think they're terrible shows. You know, it's just a whole load of prospects and they're not even fighting anybody. So it's like, you know, that's the epitome of a bad boxing card, to be honest.
What about Okoli? A lot of talk about Okoli versus Chamberlain, potentially even later this year. Chamberlain was ringside and that fight was being talked up. I'm presuming based on what you said, you'd give Chamberlain a fairly decent chance against Okoli.
Oh, I think he beats him. Yeah, I think he completely schools him. I think that's like if I'm setting the odds on that one, I think it's I make Chamberlain a 1-3 favourite.
Bloody hell! Wow. Well, that would be interesting if that fight does get made, because I suspect Okoli will start an odds-on favourite, mate. So there may be some decent value for the likes of you and I, who'd maybe be inclined to take him on, even as an undefeated fighter.
Yeah, like I think the thing is with Chamberlain, like you saw, like he dislocated his shoulder and he still managed to. Did he get it? I think he beat or did he get a draw with Wadi Camacho? He beat Wadi Camacho with a dislocated shoulder. You know what I mean? Now, Wadi Camacho would probably start as an underdog against Okoli, but not a big underdog. You know, I think Wadi Camacho would have definitely the power to hurt Okoli. And I think he probably starts as probably a 5-2 underdog. But you know, Chamberlain with his shoulder right would have schooled Wadi Camacho, and I think he'll school Okoli as well.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Tom, you're critical of the Next Gen series. I'm a bit more on the fence than you. What I'd say is, yeah, I agree. It's not the best boxing. My heart wasn't racing when it came on my screens. At the same time, you know, I think this is a kind of series that kind of does what it says. You know, it's not about the world title fights. It's not about necessarily the 50-50 fights. It is about the next generation of boxers coming through. And if I'm frank, I'd probably rather see them in a platform like this rather than being subjected to them on the Saturday night shows and, you know, on the pay-per-view bills in 4-rounders and that sort of thing. I mean, you would agree that these guys need to have their early learning fights. So, you know, do you not think that this is a better solution than having them dilute the other content?
Look, I think there is a case for having early fights for a fighter on telly, such as like AJ, Amir Khan, Sugar Ray Leonard. You know, these really, I mean, we're talking about absolute standout fighters having their fights early on telly because people are interested in them. But when it comes to these run-of-the-mill, just, you know, of that crew who've on Next Gen, a lot of them are British Olympians. But look, that doesn't mean anything in the professional game. Most people, the British guys who fight for in the Olympics, don't go on to win world medals. Don't go on, maybe a lot of them don't go on to win even British sometimes. So or maybe just British. So it's not like these guys are the super standout talents. I don't think any of them are in the same class as those other types that we've mentioned. So, like, the thing is, it's one thing having these prospects coming up, but if you think, say, the model for similar-ish kind of show was in the American, they used to have Friday night fights on ESPN. So they'd have some, like, you know, a couple of fairly well-matched lower-level opponents, and then they'd have a prospect versus another prospect, often unbeaten, or a prospect against a guy with 1 or 2 losses, and it was a step-up fight. Like, and I think that type of thing deserves to be aired on national television. But this stuff, I think, is just very poor. Like, to be honest with you, like, I think it's probably a way for Sky to produce cheap, very cheap boxing. So, like, they don't, they're not, you know, a card like that is so cheap to put on. So, you know, I think if I was a paying subscriber, as a guy who's not paying to subscribe, I've got no interest in watching that in a stream. I may watch some highlights on YouTube or something. But, you know, as a paying subscriber, like, I just think that's kind of taking the mick, to be honest with you. Like, who is it? Is it Stuart Hall's going to be on one of the Next Generation cards? Like, so they don't even live up to their name. What it is usually, I think it's just...
I didn't know that was Stuart Hall, mate. Is that confirmed, is it?
I'm pretty sure. Like, somebody can check it there in the chat. They'll tell me. But I think Stuart Hall is fighting on the next one. So, like, right. This is, you know, or has fought already on a Next Gen card. You know, I just think they're kind of poor. You know, like even say the poor cards that are on Box Nation. Say, like, the York Hall one that it was on the Big Boy Jones Jr. defending his Central Area or Southern Area title, featherweight title, on as a headliner. You know, like, even though that was a small hall card, like, and it was one of the poorer shows you put on it, the fights were well matched, and it turned out to get some actually good fights to watch. And there was a few prospects thrown in. But just like this prospect, and talking about how these guys are amazing, you know, quality, and then you watch some of them, like watching Okoli, and they're talking about how he's such an amazing talent. Like, I don't know, anybody with a boxing head might say Okoli's got a lot of power, right? And, you know, maybe he's he's like, to me, he's like equivalent to looking like a 5-fight Deontay Wilder. But that shouldn't be on Showtime Boxing. Remember, Deontay Wilder wasn't on telly until about 25 fights in, because he was ropey as hell and fighting absolutely rubbish quality. And it's the same with Okoli and some of these boys. You know, they're not, like, people kind of forget about Amir Khan. When Amir Khan won that medal in like whatever is it, Athens Olympics in 2000 or whenever the hell it was, 2004. Like he was amazing. Like he went to nearly win a gold medal at 17, and he was like up against one of the all-time great Cubans, Kindelan, and he nearly won. Like, and he was knocking guys left, right, and center. Like someone like Amir Khan deserves that kind of headline and shows when he's when he's a starter. But like a lot of these guys, you know, to be honest with you, whether some of them actually end up going and becoming good pros, I don't think they deserve it. And I think that those type of cards are just cheap filler. That's all they are. Very cheap shows.
They are cheap, and they are just a way of padding records. But you've probably got a better social life than I do, Iris. But to be honest, I was sitting at home on a Friday night twiddling my thumbs, and I was pleased to have something to watch. I mean, don't you think Box Nation are doing something? Well, I know they don't have the format, but would you say that guys like Daniel Dubois and Anthony Yard and Leon Woodstock, I mean, these are exciting fighters to watch, but we've seen their early fights broadcast on Box Nation as well.
Yeah, like you see, I think that the difference there is Frank doesn't have a show of all badly matched fights with prospects. You know, I don't mind like when there's an elite prospect being thrown into the middle, like, you know, an Anthony Joshua or an Anthony Yard or a Daniel Dubois. I'm actually interested in seeing their early fights on the telly. Same as I was with Tyson Fury's early fights. I'm interested in seeing those elite talents mixed in, but as a part of a good show, but like not, you know, not a show of posh. And the other thing is, I was sitting in on Friday, and I'm telling you, I have zero social life right at the moment. So I was sitting in, and I didn't put it on. You know, I think if I had to put it on, the missus would probably have left.
See, that's the difference. I was sitting at home solo, mate. So a night with Lawrence Okoli was more appealing at that particular time. But there you go. All right, Tom. Cheers for that, mate. We'll come back to you in just a second. Jay, let's bring you in, pal. How's things?
Yeah, good. Thanks, mate. Good.
Did you watch the card?
I watched a few of the fights. Yeah. I really dislike it. I think it's just a cynical marketing exercise by Matchroom. On one hand, like you guys said, I understand that, you know, they have to match them up with tomato cans early on, but I just don't see the real benefit of them. Okoli, he looks like a knockout waiting to happen. Personally, he's so wide open and just really he just doesn't look good at all. But actually, I thought looked all right. I thought he looked good. I thought he's got quick hands. He's very accurate. Did some good body shots. I saw Conor Benn just looks like he's the same Conor Benn. I don't see where the progressions come after 8 fights. As I said, I just think it's just a big marketing thing. It's like, let's get their faces shown. Let's get them ready for pay-per-view. They're just building money. That's all I see, not building careers. And the problem is, I think, is that it's a little bit too much exposure for a young fighter, an early fighter. In the case that, you know, I watched interviews with Conor Benn, and he talked about it when he started. He was spending lots of money and going and buying expensive clothes, etc. And it's almost like, you know, they're obviously earning decent money, and it kind of feels like they're already there. They've already made it. And it makes me wonder, you know, how that's going to affect them later on in their career when they start to get to 15, 16, 17 fights, when the levels really step up. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's kind of happened to Ahara Davis. When you get other fighters of that age, of that ilk, that haven't got the big Matchroom promotion deal and have to struggle their way through, you know, these small hall shows making next to nothing, and you wonder if their hunger is a lot more than necessarily these guys on the big like a next gen show, even though it's not big in the sense of a Anthony Joshua bill or in a big stadium or whatever. But for their level, it's a lot of exposure, and it's big exposure being on Sky TV.
Yeah, 100%. Are you saying that maybe the hunger isn't there to the same extent with a Conor Benn type fighter?
I think it's a mindset. I mean, if you look at there's different types of fighters. So you could take like Marcus Maidana, for instance. As soon as he earned that big money against Floyd Mayweather, that was it, wasn't it? It was, if you see him now, he's about 6 stone overweight, smoking cigars and enjoying a glass of champagne. So, he obviously really wasn't in the love, but he's worked so hard for such a long period of time to get that payday, and then he got it, and then that was, I'd say, pretty much enough for him. You have to admire someone like Floyd, who earns mega amounts of money, but still has the hunger to train because he wants to be a legend, a great, like Anthony Joshua, earn massive amounts of money, but, could finish it now and be quite happy and live quite comfortably, but he wants to be seen as a legend of the sport, go down in history. I wonder that a lot of the younger lads, when they're getting paid so well and they're doing so well and so much exposure, they start to believe their own hype and believe they've actually made it. And like many people say this quote, as Hagler said, if it's hard to get up in the morning in silk pajamas, to get out of the bed and do those ones at 5 o'clock in the morning, because if it were you and you earned £500,000, £1 million, it's hard for you to get up, go to work and have your boss shouting at when you're thinking, what the fuck do I need you for? So, that concerns me. I don't know whether it's a big factor or not. People might disagree, but that's something that really struck me with these fights, with these cards, because it is just like a marketing exercise. It's just exposure. Let's just get them on the TV. Let's get them seen. Let's make money, because we know, the more times and the football fans and the sports fans regularly see these names of Coley, Boazzi, the regular times they see these faces, then eventually when they get to 15-0 and they get that, now that the world titles are a lot more diluted and could get a world title shot at 15, 16, 17, 18 fights, it's going to be an easy sell on a pay-per-view.
Yeah. I guess what you're saying is that Conor Benn wouldn't be wearing silk pajamas if it wasn't for a platform like this. I mean, if we compare him, say, to Harley Benn, Harley Benn probably buys his pajamas at Primark. I guess that is the sort of comparison. Yeah,
and it must be very difficult. And I'm not blaming them, because you've got to take your money. Fair play to you. You're putting your health on the line, and they're lucky enough to have those big contracts. But I wonder if Wahara Davis maybe is a product of that. Very hyped, big shows, obviously earning quite a bit of money. Comes up against Josh Taylor and gets spanked. And are you working hard enough? Are you getting up? Because it must be very difficult. I know personally, if I don't earn lots of money, but if someone put a fair chunk of my money in the next day, it's going to be in my bank. It's going to be very difficult the next day to really get motivated to do anything to earn more money.
Yeah. No, I hear you completely, Jay. Just a word on Cordina, Jay. He seems to be the one most people are agreeing is the one who is the most exciting right now. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think so. I think I don't know. I do wonder. I know they're turning over into a professional game, but I do wonder why they match him. He's obviously got great amateur experience. He's obviously very well schooled. He could step into a higher level already. But it's kind of like, again, it's risk over reward sort of thing, and they don't want to risk it within the first fights that a problem could happen. Like a Vasil, basically challenged for a world title in his second fight because of his great amateur experience. If he started from the low levels, it would have just been a pointless exercise. So, he has got that talent, definitely. I think they all have to a certain extent, but they're not all going to go all the way. But saying that, with Eddie Hearn's management and promotional skills, they probably all at some point will probably get a world title shot. I reckon you could go and put a bet in that every one of those at some point will challenge for a world title, regardless of how good they are.
Yeah, good point. Cheers, Jay. Up to about 120 of you watching live right now. So if you are one of the 120, please hit the thumbs up button. Thanks for tuning in. Let's move on to discuss some of the news in boxing. And this week, the news is probably the most relevant section of this show because lots of stuff going on. Let's bring Iris Tom back on. Iris, some big fights confirmed this week. Anthony Joshua versus Pulev, Joyce versus Ian Lewison, Deontay Wilder versus Luis Ortiz looking ever so increasingly likely. All of those happen to be heavyweight fights, but potentially 2017 has been an absolutely vintage year so far. Potentially a very, very strong run-in between now and Christmas. What's your take, mate?
Yeah, like Joshua Pulev doesn't. I don't think it's a great fight. I suppose it's a decent, mandatory. Well, I don't know about mandatory, but it's a decent-ish level of defense. It's better than some of the other ones that Joshua's had, but I don't know if it's going to sell out 90,000 in Cardiff. I feel like I don't know if people will go. Maybe the Welsh will turn up if the tickets are priced right, but it doesn't feel like a stadium fight to me. I wouldn't be surprised if it did 45, 50, but I don't know. Maybe I'm underestimating what the hype can be, but it's I think the bookies have it as 1-25 fight, which kind of tells you everything you need to know about that fight.
So it's kind of in 5 minutes, mate.
Yeah, I don't know. Like we'll see. Like just because it's Joshua, I feel like a 1-25 fight. I think the reaction has been reasonably negative, even from the more casual fans. So it's not a fight I'm particularly looking forward to. The Ortiz Wilder fight is a great fight. To me, that's quite a 50-50 fight. I think that's a 50-50 fight. I think that's a great fight if it's made. What was the other heavyweight one?
Joe Joyce versus Ian Lewison. That, for me, very interesting fight. Decent
fight, yeah. But these guys come and doing a lot of WSBs. They really don't need to. If you're like, I don't know how many WSB fights he's had, but I think he's probably had how many?
15, I believe.
15. Well, that's just that. They're much tougher than any of these. I think the next level up is something like Ian Lewison. It could even be probably a step down. From fighting Usyk to fighting John Lewison. And I think I expect him to just completely walk through him. I don't think. I wonder what the odds. I don't know what the odds are on that.
Lewison versus Joe Joyce.
Yes.
I haven't seen the odds. No. I think one thing that's relevant, Iris, is Lewison did quite a good job against Dillian White, and he took that fight on late notice. He's coming in here with 11 weeks' notice ahead of the fight. Do you not think that he could put on an even better showing than he did against Dillian White? And wouldn't it be quite impressive if the guy Joe Joyce could put in a performance to that level on his debut?
Well, I don't know. What date is it now? We're into September. It's on in 6 weeks' time. So I don't think he's had... it's on in 7 weeks' time. So I don't think he's had 11 weeks.
Mate. He tweeted about it 2 or 3 weeks ago to say he'd signed a contract and was in full training.
Okay. Yeah, but Ian Lewison is God knows what weight he was. When he fought Dillian White, he weighed in at 19 stone or something.
Del Boy said he's 7-1, by the way, mate.
Yeah, he's 7-1, and Joe Joyce is 1-14. I think those odds are about right. I think the Joe Joyce side is about right, 1-14. Ian Lewison, no. Joe Joyce has got a great engine. He's perfectly suited to going 10 rounds. He's going to be hitting a lot harder with the smaller gloves. He's got a great chin. Lewison's not going to knock him out. Lewison's going to gas. Joe Joyce going to have a very high output. I expect him to bowl him over inside probably 4 rounds or something like that. Dillian White is, Dillian White in that fight was poor, and I think Joe Joyce, if you put Joe Joyce in at a debut against Dillian White, he'd beat him reasonably easy.
I think Lewison might beat Joe Joyce. I really do. I'm not saying that it's the percentage call that Lewison will necessarily win this, but I think he's very underrated in this fight. I think it's a very, very, very big ask on debut, mate, but we shall see. What about Wilder versus Ortiz? Good fight, definitely. I agree it's a 50-50. Do you have a slight lean in that one?
Well, it's just a very good matchup, you know. It's a very good matchup. I think Deontay, if he can use his distance like he did against Bermane Stavern, and if he can be fight disciplined, he might be able to win it on the back foot. But Ortiz has got, I think Ortiz has got heavy hands. He's got decent output. He's got good foot movement and good boxing ability. So he's a superior boxer, and he probably has maybe not the one punch power, but he's still a dangerous puncher. I think he's the better boxer. So I think it's, I don't see him getting knocked out by I don't see him getting knocked out by Wilder. I think he's a tough guy. So I think it's you know, I think I might even edge towards Ortiz, to be honest. I think Ortiz will be able to win a lot of rounds. Like, if we look at the level of fighters that have been winning rounds lately, they haven't, like, we've had Gerald Washington won numerous rounds. I actually had the Polish dude Spilka win at the time of the fight, at the time he was stopped, even though the scorecards weren't giving it to him. But I wouldn't be surprised if Ortiz boxes him. Maybe doesn't get the decision. But I think I'd probably have Ortiz as a slight favourite, maybe a 4-5 favourite versus 5-4 the other way.
Do you know what? I have it exactly the opposite. I agree it's a very close fight that both guys could win. I make Wilder a slight favourite, maybe exactly the odds you've said, just the other way around. I make Wilder 4-5. I think there's a reasonable chance Luis Ortiz will knock Wilder out. I think Luis Ortiz may hit Wilder harder than he's been hit before, and I think if Ortiz can get on the inside and work the body, I think he could possibly stop Wilder. But Luis Ortiz is a very small heavyweight. You know, there's been a lot of hype about him, but he's going to be very small and very slow and very unathletic in there compared to Wilder. And if Wilder can use his speed and his jab, I honestly think Ortiz is going to be there for the taking with long range right hands. And he may have a very good chin, but Wilder has world class power. And I suspect Ortiz is way past his best. I think the decline and lack of momentum in Ortiz's career is there for all to see already. And I think another layoff going into a Wilder fight, I think it would be a big uphill strip battle for him. But I do think he's got the kind of style that if he was a few years younger could cause a lot of problems for Wilder. So I don't rule him out. It's a great fight though. Really good.
Yeah, it's a proper excellent fight. You know, what the fans want are 50-50 fights, well-matched fights, even at the lower levels. One thing I didn't say about the next gen card is, like, you know, it must be quite annoying to people who are paying money to Sky that they're making such an amazing amount of money on some of these pay-per-views. You know, they're really, you know, kind of fleecing the boxing fans, especially at a monster pay-per-view like AJ and stuff like that. And it's obvious to look at it that the actual level of the quality, I think, of the Sky stuff that's not pay-per-view, and even some of the pay-per-views, the quality is going down. It's like, you know, where is this supposed reinvestment of all the massive millions they're making from these things? You know, what happens at these, what's happening now with this AJ money, it's being pocketed by AJ. Don't have too much of a problem with that. Matchroom, you know, I don't like promoters making a lot of money. And Sky are taking a savage amount. And they're using boxing, it seems to me, as a money-making scheme to pay for their football. So as a boxing fan, I think it must be very frustrating if you're somebody who's paying a lot of money and buying these pay-per-views and what you're getting served up is fucking next gen.
Yeah. No, I have some sympathy with that, you know. I am paying a Sky subscription, and I am one of the very few who do that, and who isn't. I'm not a Formula One fan. I'm not a Premier League fan. You know, the boxing is a key reason, contributing factor to why I spend that money. And I know there's ways of getting certain bits of equipment, and there's ways of streaming and that sort of thing. But you know, for me, I really enjoy boxing. You know, something I really properly buzz off, as you guys know, and I don't want to be there on Saturday night struggling to get a stream on my phone. You know, I want to be able to sit on my sofa and watch the fights on my TV, watch them live. But you know, I would say it's become so pay-per-view heavy, and the caliber of the cards does seem to have declined. You know, so maybe if that trend continues throughout the season, I'm going to have to consider that. You know, but there you go. There you go. Cool. Okay. Let's bring Jay back in. Jay, let's same sort of topic. Some big fights announced. Let's start with Joyce Lewison, actually, mate. Is it going to be a bit of a Glowacki moment for me if I potentially pick Ian Lewison score the upset there?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I think he's got, you know, good tools to do the job. We know Lewison can be physically not on his top of his game when it comes to fights. You can see that he's got a good skill set that could trouble a lot of fighters. He's always one that's been talked about of not fulfilling potential, etc., etc. I admire Joyce for taking that as his first fight. I watched the interview today with David Hay, and he said, you know, there's no reason why, you know, he'd have no doubt. He's got no doubt in his mind putting him in with Lewison on his first fight, you know, because he said, what's the point of him fighting someone that's going to get blown out within 30 seconds, which obviously made me laugh to myself because, you know, David Hay, as we know, with his 2 fights on Dave, was totally guilty of having opponents that he was going to blow out. So they obviously want to rush him quite quickly. Whether that's for his benefit or not, I don't really know. If David Hay's your advisor, he obviously has a big say in your opponents, but then again, he should have. Well, I don't think he won the gold medal because he was against a very good Frenchman. But I definitely feel like I admire him for taking the step, and I think he could be a banana skin really early in his career. But at the same time, we crave better opponents, you know. So if you think about it, would David Dubois, for instance, Daniel Dubois, for instance, against Lewison. I mean, how would you think that would go? You know, but there is no way they would put him in against someone of that level. So in some ways, he has to be admired, but it could be a banana skin. But they're obviously very confident that he can beat him.
Stylistically, I view Joe Joyce as like a high-class Derek Chisora. Potentially, the kryptonite to that style is the sort of long-range, slick boxer. And I actually think the Frenchman, Tony Yoka, was able to expose some of those deficiencies by his sort of Joe Joyce. And with Joe Joyce being potentially a slow starter, could Lewison be 3 or 4 rounds up in a 10-round fight, Joe? Oh, I think we've lost Jay there.
Hello, anybody hear Anthony?
Yeah, I can hear you, mate. I think we might have just lost Jay.
Sorry, yeah.
I'm back now.
I'm back, sorry.
Oh, thank you. Did you hear what I was saying, mate, or did you miss it?
You said you think the deficiencies in Joyce's game after that final.
Yeah, what I'm getting at is, do you think that Lewison has that sort of slick style, that amateur experience himself to maybe pick up some early rounds using his long-range boxing against a guy like Joe Joyce, who may essentially be a high-class pressure fighter?
Yeah, I think he does, but it's going to come down to who really wants it more. Joe Joyce is going to be excited. He's going to be fresh. He's going to be out to prove a point. So he's got that on his side. It's whether Lewison comes in with the right mindset and the right physical shape for a fight like this, because it's not going to be easy for Lewison. Let's get it straight. So I think he has got the ability, going back to what you said, to beat Joyce and expose him. But I just think, you know, the freshness and the will to win and the excitement of his debut will probably push him over the edge, to be honest. I think, but he will at times cause him problems, most definitely.
Good stuff. What about Wilder Ortiz? You know, and also Joshua Pulev. Which of those are you most excited for? And you know, do you see both of those as competitive?
Joshua Pulev. Is it a mandatory? It is a mandatory, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, so, you know, it's the mandatory. Wilder's tied up. Tyson Fury's not fighting. Parker and Hughie Fury are fighting. So, bar, you know, a Povetkin, who else really should he be fighting? So it's the only, you know, the only fight out there for him. It's not a blockbuster. How old? Pulev's quite old, isn't he? He's what, 38 now, is it? Is that right? He's quite old.
Kind of way, yeah.
I don't think he's going to cause him any problems. I don't think there's anyone there, as we know, bar Tyson Fury, bar possibly Wilder, you know, of causing Joshua Real any problems. So I think it's just another nice little payday for him, and he'll go on and hopefully, you know, unify the division. As far as Wilder Ortiz goes, I think you're right in what you said. It's the inactivity of Ortiz which is a problem. His age, because I think I'm not exactly sure what age he is or what he's down as. He's down as 38. I'd say he's probably more like 45. So I think his age is completely wrong. His last three opponents, Dave Allen, Malik Scott, Tony Thompson, and Brian Jennings was probably his last top-end opponent. So that's a bit worrying straight away. If you look at his record, who really has he beaten? You know, he hasn't really beaten, you know, Monty Barrett, Byron Polly, no real standout names on that record. But then again, nor has Wilder, agreed. But I think, yeah, his age, the inactivity, I think, as you said, a prime Ortiz would cause Wilder so many problems. But it will be interesting. It's a good fight, and it will be interesting to see how Wilder approaches it, you know, because it's the first time he's going up against someone who's a real skilled boxer and comes from that Cuban style and really, you know, really knows his ring craft and his way around the ring, can take a punch, can give it. So it's going to be interesting to see that, and it's going to be interesting to see Ortiz properly, because we haven't seen him. You know, he was chasing Malik Scott around the ring. He probably wasn't really up for the Dave Allen fight. So it's going to be really interesting to see the time away has affected him, his age has affected him, and how he deals with Wilder. But at least it's the first fight in probably Wilder's career that you can really go, you know, this is a tough one. You know, let's see what you can really do now. And if he beats Ortiz, I think he makes a bit of a statement and shows, yeah, I can go on. And it sets it up nicely for a clash with Anthony Joshua. With Ortiz, I'd like to see Ortiz win personally, because Ortiz seems to be waiting around so long for this title fight, just waiting and waiting just to get this crack at this title. So, you know, it's a time for both guys to really step up and prove their worth and show that they deserve that title, or to keep that title in Wilder's case.
Yeah, so if you had to make a decision, Jay, I'm guessing Wilder potentially.
Yeah, I think I you know, law of averages, I'd take him purely for youth. Purely, he's got that knockout power, but I wouldn't rule it out because he's wide open to be hit so much. Those looping shots, he comes in, you know, and Ortiz is the perfect person to really execute a plan that could really expose Wilder. So it'll be really interesting to see. But if I had to put my life on it or my money on it, I'd pick Wilder. Because I think though Wilder's probably, their team have probably been looking at that fight. They're looking for a big name because so many people are calling him to fight someone of repute. And I think they're probably looking at Ortiz and thinking right now is a good time to catch him. He's at that age. He's in the decline. He hasn't looked that impressive. His last couple of fights, he's been out since, December he fought. So he's been out like, it's going to be like 10 months or whatever. So You know, I think that it's probably a calculated risk on their part.
100%. 100%. Interesting stuff. Jet, let's bring you in, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, not so bad. Yourselves?
Yeah, not bad, mate. Not bad. Thanks for joining us. I don't know how long you've been there for, Jet, but we've just been talking about some of the big potential fights that have been made. So Lewison versus Joyce confirmed, Joshua versus Pulev confirmed, Wilder versus Ortiz unconfirmed, but looking very likely. Let's start with Lewison versus Joyce. Jet, an extremely ambitious debut fight, potentially too ambitious. What's your take?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very tough fight for Joyce. Credit where credit's due. He's obviously said, I don't want any sort of gimme fights, any warm-up fights. He wants to go in with a decent operator, especially at British heavyweight level. So, yeah, best of luck to him. But I think, obviously Ian Lewison's been a pro of, very inactive, but he's been a pro a long time. He knows kind of the ins and outs, all these prospects, and he's fought, some prospects or in someone in Dillian White, I guess. And, he didn't disgrace himself. So he's got some really good skills that obviously if he can get in shape, for him, it'd be, the fight would be much more winnable. But I think if he's not in shape and, Joyce puts on the pressure, which we expect he will, he might fade late on. But, it's a very, very tough fight. Lewison is in with a chance. He's live in the fight, even unfit. He seems to have some notice. So,
He's had 11 weeks' notice, mate, which must be the most notice he's had for any fight in his entire career.
Yeah, so obviously, they're trying to set up a credible win, I guess, for Joyce. It'll be more credible than, maybe Dillian White's win, who got I wouldn't say a close decision, but he did have some rough moments in the fight, let's put it that way. So they obviously want a sort of credible win, and yeah, good luck to obviously Joyce's team. David Hayes obviously kind of managing his career or promoting his career. So he's put him in with a very, very live opponent, and I think it could be a potential banana skin. I'm not saying Lewison's going to beat him, but if he gets a strong foothold and Joyce runs out of ideas, it could be very interesting the last few rounds. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think Lewison, I've been saying I may well pick him. I think Lewison could easily win the first 3 or 4 rounds. And then I think it could really, 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 I think Lewison is very slippery. I think he's got exactly the style to cause problems for Joyce. And I think whilst Joyce will surely come on strong and build that pressure, Lewison's a very durable guy. He's an experienced pro. He's a very high-class amateur, Ian Lewison. I really see this as a potential bad piece of judgment here for David Hay. But we shall see. Perhaps it will turn out to be a very, very good judgment. Okay, Jet, what about Joshua versus Pulev? That's been announced. Do you reckon it will sell out the 80,000 seats? And how excited are you for it?
Be honest, I'm not very excited for it. And I was actually speaking to some of my boxing friends and some casual people about AJ because they said the Pulev fight was made, and what do I think of it? And I just said, mate, Pulev is a poor man's Klitschko. He's 36, I think 37. He's very old. He's robotic, I think, in his approach. He's very one-dimensional, and I'm not saying Chisora obviously beat him because one of the scorecards was absolutely terrible. That gave 115, 113 to Chisora in Germany, I think it was, or Bulgaria. But I think Chisora did make it very hairy for Pulev at some points in the fight. Very sporadic points in the fight, and I think Josh was just too dynamic, too powerful. He punches like a mule, and Pulev, he's not going to stand up to it. He doesn't seem like he's the most durable guy. Seemed to have laboured against Kevin Johnson and Samuel Peter and these sort of opponents. And I think Joshua probably not. Joshua obviously knocked out Johnson in 2 rounds, and he would knock out Peter in 2 or 3. To be honest, so. Yeah, not a fight that's interesting me. I don't think it's going to sell out the Principality. And yeah, it is one of those ones we're just gonna have to bear through it, and there's gonna be a ton of people streaming it. Let's put it that way.
It's interesting that you guys, well, certainly Tom and Jet aren't sure it will sell out. I think Joshua could sell out Wembley doing pads. I really do. I think he is an absolute phenomenon. And if you look back at some of his earlier fights at the O2, when his name was a lot less than it is now, there were 50,000 people in the queue after the tickets had already sold out. I don't think they will struggle to sell out the stadium in Wales whatsoever. In fact, I think it will sell out very, very easily. But I guess this is new territory, so will be interesting to see, I guess. Jet, what about Wilder versus Ortiz? Tom was slightly leaning to Ortiz. Jay and I slightly leaning towards Wilder. What would your take on this matchup be?
Yeah, I'd have to go with Irish, because Irish seems to be on fire tonight. Yeah, I'd probably have to side with Ortiz just about. I think Wilder's, he's obviously got that power, don't get me wrong. Ortiz has aged a lot, and he doesn't look the same fighter he did, in the fight maybe against Brian Jennings or Latif Coyote, those sort of fights. But in especially the first sort of 4 to 6 rounds, I think he'll give Wilder absolute hell. And I think if he could stop him there, which is highly likely, then that'd probably be an option. I'm not saying he will stop him, but that'd probably be the most likely sort of Ortiz win. But Wilder's obviously got that equalizer. If he does get his jab going, if the fight obviously does get made, if he does get his jab going, it could be a problem for Ortiz. He doesn't, he comes in inside, but obviously he's aged a bit, and he's obviously not as quick and dynamic as he once was. And maybe he's even 47. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, it's a good fight. It's a fight. It's one of those interesting fights. I think it will split a lot of people. Some people side with Wilder, and some people side with Ortiz. But I'd have to give a slightly into Ortiz. I think he might just have a bit too much in the early rounds, especially. And we know Wilder does struggle a bit in the early rounds, especially like some Arthur Spilker fights. I know they're not the same fighter, but he does seem like a bit of a slow starter.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think my concern with Luis Ortiz is that he's going to be very small and very slow compared to Wilder, and I think as he tries to get into range, he's potentially going to be a sitting duck. I agree. If he does get into range and if he can start landing on Wilder, he could very well knock Wilder out. But I think given recent Luis Ortiz performances, I just think he's going to struggle putting himself in that position. Jet, what's your take?
Yeah, I could also see that. I mean, as I said, he hasn't aged well, let's put it that way. But Wilder's very, very open. If you look at, even I know they're not the same fighter, Spilker, Washington, but he leaves himself wide open. His punches are very, we've obviously seen the memes and whatnot on Twitter doing the rounds with the windmill. And, there's no guarantee that he's going to keep Luis Ortiz at bay. Luis Ortiz is relentless. He doesn't obviously have this sort of a stamina and a gas tank to go for the full 12 rounds, but he definitely be able to cause problems for Wilder. And I think in the early rounds, Wilder, he's sussing his opponent out. Maybe he's just a slow start. I'm not 100% sure, but he seems to struggle a lot in his early rounds against opponents. And I think if he does that against someone like Ortiz, he's playing with fire. Ortiz will come, he'll bring the pressure. He can box a bit from the outside and on the inside slightly. He does have a bit more tools to his game rather than a Deontay Wilder. So that's the only reason I pick him. I know he hasn't aged well, but it still is an intriguing fight. It's obviously for a real version of the world heavyweight title and potential opponent for Anthony Joshua going down the line as well.
Definitely. Great fight. Let's hope it gets confirmed. Guys, next topic. I'm going to kind of throw this out there generally rather than to a specific panelist. We've discussed pay-per-view on this podcast extensively, although not for a good few episodes. And I think the topic has re-emerged this week in a number of avenues, really. I actually uploaded a video yesterday. But ITV have won the Super 8 boxing tournament. My understanding, although I'm not sure this has been formally announced, is that there is going to be a healthy amount of pay-per-view associated with that tournament. I've heard rumours that Groves versus Cox will be pay-per-view. Eubank versus Yildirim will be pay-per-view. And obviously, Eubanks versus the winner of Groves-Cox in the semi-finals, assuming that Eubanks beats Yildirim. Hughie Fury versus Joseph Parker is going to be pay-per-view on YouTube pay-per-view, a new platform. And then also Canelo versus Triple G is going to be on a Box Nation pay-per-view at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning or whatever time it is. So it's pay-per-view season. The silver lining to that cloud is it is an extremely exciting time for boxing. Huge amount of stuff going on. Such a busy schedule. I noticed Smith Scogland's on the same night as Billy Joe Saunders. But what do you guys make of this? You know, there's a huge amount of water being tested here. This is completely new territory with a tournament function, with a late night Box Nation pay-per-view that doesn't involve Floyd Mayweather, and with a YouTube pay-per-view for Hughie Fury versus Parker. What do you think is going to emerge as the success here? What do you think is going to emerge as a flop?
Well,
go on, Tom.
Sorry, I was just going to say there's no such thing as it's an oxymoron to say a healthy amount of pay-per-view. It's like saying a healthy amount of cancer. The other thing I'd say is, like, you know, George Groves versus Jamie Cox's pay-per-view. Jesus Christ, lads! This is how low it's sunk.
Is that going to be pay-per-view though? Or I'd imagine they're just going to.
I don't know.
The semi-finals and the finals, really, aren't they?
My understanding is that it will be pay-per-view, but I don't actually have I haven't seen that confirmed. So let me just run a search as we're talking. But I can't confirm that.
I would imagine they'll pick and choose what pay-per-view fights they're going to do. So you could see George Groves in a semi against is Eubank on his side of the semi. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, so that would probably be a pay-per-view.
Who's got a semi?
I have a semi about George Groves against Chris Eubank Jr.
Against Cox.
So I'd imagine that. But could you? I can't really see Usyk Hook being pay-per-view because in this country it's going to sell 600.
No, it won't be. Yeah, but no, it wouldn't. Like, the other thing as well is, like, Hughie being on pay-per-view.
Again, I just want to. It does appear from Twitter that Groves versus Cox and Eubank versus Yildirim are both confirmed as pay-per-views. It's actually the Eubank Yildirim one that annoys me even more. But yeah, I just wanted to throw it out there.
Well, Eubank, I think Eubank Yildirim is a better fight than Cox versus Groves probably. And Yildirim is a step up from the previous Eubank pay-per-views. So it's in the same ballpark. But, you know, that is like, you know, I don't know. That's kind of crazy. And I don't even know what ITV channel these are on. I hope they're on ITV 3 or 2 or 4 or something. But I think they might be on ITV Box Office, channel 493. Who the fuck's going to know about them good fights then?
So sorry, I'm reading up on this as we're talking. I should have probably done the research before we went live, but there you go. So the first fight this weekend, Usyk versus Marco Huck, that's not actually going to be shown live. That's going to be shown on some sort of delay later on in the evening. Callum Smith versus Eric Scogland will be shown on ITV4, and then the Eubank and Yildirim, as well as the Cox and Groves fights, will be shown on ITV's pay-per-view channel.
Well, that was obviously the deal for Eubank Jr. to do this tournament, wasn't it? With his deal with ITV, you know, he obviously knew about this before he entered that tournament, that he was, because he obviously wants to stay on pay-per-view constantly now for the rest of his career. So that was obviously put in place before this was announced. It must have been, you know.
Yeah, well, the other thing as well is, like, the Hughie one. The Hughie thing is, like, you know, that shows you how crap pay-per-view is. Like, you know, Hughie is not a well-known fighter in the UK. You know, a fight like that is the type of fight that should be on BT Sports or Sky Sports 1 or ITV or Channel 5. It'd draw millions of people and it'd make its name. And what are they going to do with it? They're going to put it on YouTube. You know, that's just such rubbish.
That's great, you know, from Hennessy. Most definitely. Because
I don't know,
from what I've seen, Hennessy's put his own money into it, hasn't he? So this is what Frank Warren said today, that he's put Hennessy's put his own money into it, and they want to utilise it. I don't know though how will it allow it to be available to a wider audience than just the UK? I don't know really how it's going to work. I
think it depends on how you set it up and what rights you have.
Yeah.
I think they're selling it on television in New Zealand. But, you know, regardless, it's like you have a guy like Huey who's not a household name. You know, I'm sure Mick is thinking I'll put loads of YouTube advertising and internet advertising everywhere. But, like, that just can't compete with these major broadcast channels. You know, they just have a basic propaganda machine behind them. They can just advertise as much as they want, you know, for free, essentially. So, to me, it's like, I
wonder, actually. I'm not sure I understand this criticism about the YouTube pay-per-view. You know, like
how do they market it? Like, how do they market it?
Well, let's put it this way. I'm sitting in a studio flat somewhere in the UK with no advertising budget whatsoever, and I stuck up a video that at one point got 60,000 views. You know, if I can do that, then an event like Huey Fury versus Parker could easily, you know, generate a good level of interest. The thing about YouTube pay-per-view that I find so interesting is it's so accessible. It really is so accessible, and there's people like I'm thinking of a lot of my family here who don't have Sky, who would never in a million years go on a website and register their credit card details so they could organise an ITV pay-per-view. But maybe they would be inclined to look at YouTube. You know, we've all got YouTube. There's probably more.
They still have to register, but they still have to register a credit card with YouTube.
Well, will it be done through PayPal or possibly something like that? You know,
it won't be PayPal because they're not a part of the Google empire. It'll be something else, and they'll have to give their credit card to pay, because you have to do any of these YouTube pay stuff. If you want to watch like TV series on YouTube, you have to put your credit card details in, and so they'll still have that hurdle. But the other thing is, like, they're going to have to. How do you get people into watching a guy like Huey, for example? He has to become well known. Like, and he can never become well known if he's going to be stuck on YouTube pay-per-view. It's like putting Terence Crawford versus who was it? Postal on pay-per-view, and they got 50, 60,000 buys. You know, it's just bullshit. And you know, Terence Crawford will get 4 million hits or 5 million views on ESPN, you know, and that will probably earn more money than the other one, and your fighter is better known. I just think it's, you know, I agree. Like, I think I'd love if fights were on YouTube, full stop. And if the fighters became very popular and they sold their advertising that way, but you know, YouTube have a monopoly, so they don't pay their much for advertising. But you know, it's just to me, it's incompetent. If you had the chance to go on BT, look, I think Mick Hennessy is a terrible promoter. You know, he may be a nice guy or he may not be a nice guy, but like the Furies are just, you know, pissing money down the drain. The amount of money they're badly run. Like, Mick hasn't put on a boxing show in God knows how long. He doesn't have any fighters, and he's pissing in the wind. It shows the power of, if you don't have a big promoter, if you don't have a channel deal, like you know, all these Kelly Maloney, Mick Hennessy, any of these guys who used to be Dennis Hobson, these guys used to be on Sky now, and they don't have a channel deal, they're screwed. The most things, you're tied to your TV channel. And now maybe you can make that transition. Like, it's one thing being Floyd Mayweather and going to YouTube, you know, that can work, but going there before you have anything, I just think is pure incompetence.
Yeah, look, I mean, the undercard's terrible as well. I agree this may not be the fight to launch it on, but I do think YouTube as an option is is very, very interesting and something that I'd like to see pursued more generally.
It's only £10, isn't it? That right as well. It's only a tenner.
It goes up to 15 unless you order it quickly.
So a tenner is, you know, half the price of any usual, you know, or at least a lot cheaper than any usual pay-per-view. So, you know, if they've got, like, say, 100,000 Twitter followers between them, you know, add a couple onto that. You know, I think you're right with the accessibility of it. I think it's a good idea, but you know, Eddie Hearn did talk about there's going to be a lot more coming from pay-per-view from different areas, and I think everyone's just jumping on it. You hope that with so much of it, it will, you know, help it become more, well, better fights to be made because of it. You know, because it'll get saturated so much that it'll just weaken the value of it as such.
Yeah, I mean,
look, I don't think the card is that. Sorry, Joseph.
I think it's a very, very good fight. But I think that what makes a successful pay-per-view is not what we have here. You know, there's no bad blood. There's no WWE antics. Neither of them are hugely marketable athletes and punchers. You know, I don't think it's going to drive people to buy pay-per-views even as much as, say, the Eubank name would, for example. But I don't actually have a problem with the fight, and I don't have a problem with the YouTube platform, but I do agree it may not be a success, you know?
I have a problem with it not being a pay-per-view because it's going to limit the scope of people watching boxing. You know, that fight will do in you know, while in New Zealand it'll be probably pay-per-view too. In England, they'll probably do well to get 50,000 buys. You know? So that's 50,000 people that are seeing that instead of 4 million on Sky or 4 million on pick your, you know, we saw Josh Taylor getting, you know, 2.5-3 million on Channel 5 for, you know, a British title or whatever the hell it was. You know, this is a world heavyweight title, you know, an actual world heavyweight title. It'll be 50,000 people. No one will see it. You know, it's bullshit. Don't think I say it's like, I'm looking at the card here. The card is not great, but it's not that dissimilar to some other crap cards we've seen on pay-per-view in the past. It's certainly of the level of what you call it, Frampton versus Quigg or similar type ones. So to me, I don't particularly think it's that bad a card if it was just a normal Sky or BT one.
The card's free, isn't it?
Like it's.
The card is.
Who cares?
That's
like who's gonna.
But that's what I'm saying. The card's free. You're only paying for the fight. So the card, really,
you know,
difference.
Maybe, but like it's a kind of you know, it's such a disappointment. It's like, you know, at this stage, can the Furies be any worse managed? To be honest, it's like, I suppose Huey's young, but like, you know, he could have been on BT with this, and Mick chose to go this way. What type of managing is that?
Yeah,
it's incompetent.
Pay-per-view, because I think that's another odd one. I appreciate it's free to existing subscribers, but I think for people to get out of bed at 4 in the morning and set their alarms and wake up their wife and their kids and to buy a fight at 4 in the morning, I think it's got to be a Floyd Pacquiao, or I think it's got to be a, you know, a Floyd you know, McGregor, etc. I mean, even Eddie Hearn doesn't have a track record of doing these 3 or 4 o'clock wake ups. You know, I question whether that nighttime start will be the death of this one.
Yeah, like, and the other thing is, I remember like on Sky, imagine like Manny Pacquiao versus Cotto was free to air on Sky.
Yeah,
you know, and we're paying people. Well, some people will be paying for Joseph Parker versus Huey Fury. You know, although I think it'll be a very good fight. Well, I think it's a well-matched fight. I think Huey will school him. But like, you know, how do you compare them two? You know, I just think, you know, I think that the pay-per-view market, look at somebody put something up on Twitter. I think in the next like 9 weeks or something, there's like 9 of them or something in England, something crazy. And it's like, that's going to really damage boxing in the UK. Every single semi-decent fight is on pay-per-view. Like,
yeah,
it's fucking ridiculous. What happened to all of this? All of this money from pay-per-view is going to be drilled back in and make better Saturday night shows, or all this bullshit.
I mean,
what they're going to. It's going the opposite direction. It's going to be every semi-decent fight is going to be every semi-decent fight is going to be on pay-per-view, and it's going to affect the exposure of boxing even more. It's going to, when we have all these excellent fighters, on the British Irish shores at the moment, it's going to all be pushed behind a paywall, and then, this is a golden age, and people aren't even going to be able to see it.
It's crazy that Huey Fury hasn't even been close to pay-per-view or anything of any great exposure at all.
Has he ever even headlined? Exactly. He headlined once when somebody else pulled out.
Exactly. And no one knows.
When Joe Saunders pulled out, he fought Cassie.
Fred Cassie. And he may have headlined against Andrei Rudenko. I don't even know if he did. And that's it.
And no one knows who Parker is in this country, unless you're obviously a hardcore boxing fan. So yeah, you're right. It just seems that everyone just thinks this is the golden ticket, and let's just try it out. And I mean, I suppose if you got 100,000, 50,000 is going to make him what, $750,000? Surely, Sky or BT could pay that up front without it going to pay-per-view. I mean,
YouTube are going to take their cut as well.
Exactly. I think Hennessy must be sitting there thinking, we're going to do 500,000 buys and it's going to net us. But even at 500,000 is still going to net you, what, 7.5 million quid? So it's like, which he's not even going to get close to. So it's kind of a crazy thing. I like the idea, like Tom said, that it's on YouTube and that it is accessible on the go, on your phone, whatever. But I don't know. It doesn't deserve pay-per-view. But how many times do we sit here? And I know Tom hates pay-per-view, and BG, you're quite the advocate, and I sort of sit in the middle. But it's kind of like, how many times are we going to sit here and discuss fights that don't deserve to be on pay-per-view? And here we're discussing 3 fights that don't deserve to be on pay-per-view. But then I take it.
The Golovkin one does.
Sorry. Oh no. But sorry. When I meant 3, I meant Cox and George Groves and Eubank and this one. I mean, I don't think they're not deserving for pay-per-view. Canelo and Golovkin. Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic fight, isn't it? And it's a fight. It could be a fight of the year. So I'm fully behind that one. But the other 3, no way. But then we'll see Wilder and Ortiz for free.
I think this is such a key time for pay-per-view and for shaping where the pay-per-view will continue to be such a big feature into 2018. Because I used the phrase testing the water earlier, and I really think that's what's happening here. These broadcasters, these promoters have seen what happened with Floyd Conor. They've seen what happened with Joshua Klitschko, and they're looking to ride in off some of that success. And I think if they get sent a message with these fights, if people vote with their feet and just do not buy them, I reckon there's the opportunity here to kill it dead. I really do. We will not see this trend continuing if Huey versus Joseph Parker does 20,000 buys. If it does 150,000 buys, then, they may say that the demand is there to justify the supply. So I think this is a key point in history for pay-per-view. The other thing, just to throw in on the YouTube side, that I'll throw out there as interesting, is the ability, one of the things that YouTube has, which platforms such as ITV and Channel 5 don't have, is the ability to go global instantaneously. Now, I'm not saying there's going to be tens of thousands of Americans waiting to part with their money to watch Huey Fury versus Joseph Parker. But what I am saying is there's a lot of very substantial and large international markets who are going to have this fight made instantly accessible, or at least have the potential to have fights like this instantly accessible with a deal like this with YouTube. The other thing I would say is YouTube, as Tom alluded to, are going to have a huge incentivization here to make this a success because of 2 reasons. Number 1, YouTube will be getting a substantial cut of the revenue. And number 2, if YouTube proves its success as a platform, it will be able to get far more fights and far more events on its platform going forward. So don't be surprised if, as part of the deal, YouTube itself will provide advertisement. Don't be surprised if, leading up to the fights, YouTube will have it on their homepage, and YouTube will have links to it on, you know, as soon as anyone globally clicks on YouTube. YouTube are going to want to make this a success. They're going to make a huge amount of money, and it can be a huge business stream for them going forward. So I think the YouTube platform is the most interesting because it can be promoted all over the world instantaneously. But that's just my take on it.
Well, I think I did say to Irish Tom, I said, you know, because you said, Tom, that they're paying for it in New Zealand.
Yeah,
that's
it's
true.
on Sky TV.
Right.
You know, let's look at these markets who are going to buy it, say, pay-per-view live. Like in America, it's going to be low numbers because it's going to be like 4 o'clock in the day, you know, 5 o'clock in the evening. It's not going to get big ones there. You might get a hardcore audience. People in Africa in the same time zone, they're not going to be buying it on any great note. Maybe about 12 people in South Africa and 1 in the Congo. You know, South Americans aren't going to be buying it. They won't know either of the fighters. You know, maybe a couple of hardcores. You know, in Asia, it's going to be the middle of the night. They're not going to be watching it. In New Zealand and Australia, they're going to have it on television. They're going to have to pay for it on pay-per-view. So I think there might be you might get some thousands, you know, 10,000 probably at the top end buying it internationally. I think what YouTube won't invest heavily in this, I think, because they'd probably do many of these things for like concerts already. You know, it's one thing David Hay doing it because he's got a massive amount of exposure already as a fighter. He's very well known. Him moving to YouTube to do it could be a game changer. But Hughie Fury moving to it is nothing.
Well, it's just maybe YouTube are just testing the water here because, as you said, David Hay. But just imagine if Anthony Joshua had been put a fight on YouTube, or if Conor McGregor and Mayweather had been on YouTube. I mean, the potential for it is huge, absolutely huge.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. YouTube may want to prove that it works. Imagine if Hughie beats Joseph Parker and next year he goes out and he fights David Price, Derek Chisora, and Dillian White. You know, and those are all realistic fights, or even a Tony Bellew, you know, all on the YouTube platform. You know, this actually could happen. YouTube are incentivized to make this work, I think.
But like, as far as I know, MMA have been doing it for 3 years on YouTube. It's not like it's a big new thing on YouTube. It's a product that's exists for a while. So, you know, that's just the way. I don't think this is anything particularly new. It's an established form for doing this. As far as I know, they do concerts and stuff like that on pay-per-view as well. Maybe even wrestling. I'm not sure wrestling or not, but you know, it's not a major new thing.
I've never actually come across it before, but that's probably because I haven't looked, to be honest.
I think though it's one, but with a lot of sports, they're already tied up to contractually with certain television companies like your football and your NFL and all the big sports. And whereas boxing is something that can be manipulated and moved to different channels, you know, because a fighter is his own sort of entity. So, you know, as far as sports goes, I think maybe it's something that they can really jump on. But I mean, where does it end? Does it go to like Amazon? Would Amazon do a fight, you know, that you can access from your computer? Do you know what I mean? It's just, it opens the doors to so many other people to get on top of this, and the spending power and the power of that YouTube can utilize their reach out to people is far bigger than Sky. Is far bigger than HBO. It's far bigger than any of these companies. You know, their reach is just humongous.
That's my point. And if they decide to make this a revenue stream, having seen Floyd Conor and having seen Klitschko, the promotion that they can provide is actually more significant than the promotion of an Eddie Hearn or an Al Heyman or, you know, one of these guys, as far as I'm concerned.
Like they've been doing UFC for over 2 years.
Have they?
And WrestleMania. They have, yeah.
Views are available to stream on YouTube, are they?
Yeah, and apparently it's around since 2012. You know,
I know that. I wonder what their numbers are
Probably minor. Probably minor. You might get some international audience. But you need to remember just be in countries with good internet access, which cuts a lot of them, because a lot of times, people will have access to them probably through television, pay-per-view, and they prefer to do it. But I just think, Huey is not like, if they do a UFC on it, so Huey is Huey's a drop in the ocean. I don't know, maybe he will get the exposure, but more than likely they'll have some deal where they'll get advertisements, certain amount of advertisements on boxing related videos and such things like that, or whatever, and maybe he'll get some exposure that way. But most people on YouTube, they click skip after like 5 seconds, or if you're like me and you've got ad blocker, you don't get them at all. So we'll see.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Let me ask you guys a question. Which one of these pay-per-views, Groves Yildirim, Cox, Eubank Yildirim, Canelo Triple G, Huey Parker, which one of these pay-per-views is most likely to do 100,000 buys?
Canelo GGG.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Just in this country?
The other ones. Well, some of the other ones might. Maybe George Groves could do it. But globally, Canelo GGG, obviously.
Sorry.
But
based, I guess. Yeah.
Eubank could easily do 100,000 as well.
Do you think Canelo Triple G could do 100,000 in the UK?
Well, if Mayweather McGregor can do like 1 million or whatever they're saying, I think it can do 100,000. But that'd be about it. I don't think I'm not saying it will, but I think it's got a shot at it.
Yeah, I don't think it will myself. I don't think it'll do 100,000.
Do you think any of them will, Joe?
I think if there's enough hype, I think they're foolish in doing the first opening fights as pay-per-view. I think they should have had George Groves, Cox, for free, the Eubank fight for free, and then really build it and then push it for like the semi-final and the final, and then they could possibly do those sort of numbers. But beforehand, depending on how much they're going to put into it, advertising it and pushing it to the general public, I'm not so sure, to be honest. I mean, I don't know how much Eubank's done before on his ITV pay-per-view, which would be a good indicator on what he's going to do, for this.
There's been lots of rumoured numbers, but there's never been factual numbers.
Yeah, so it's a bit difficult to say, really. But you're selling a fight off Eubank only, and that's it. Eubank Groves, you could really sell. That's there's going to be a few more words there as well. I think there'll be some nice little meaty press conferences, but no one knows who Jamie Cox is. No one knows who Eubank's fighting. So I'm a bit disappointed because I was really excited about this Super Series and really, really looking forward to it. And when I read it would be on ITV4, I thought that's just brilliant. Every night you can get it, access it for free. But now they've put it on pay-per-view, it's put a bit of a dampener on it. It's obviously the only way they've been able to secure this contract for the Super Series is by putting it on pay-per-view in the hope that they make these numbers. But I think the TV companies, they're not stupid. Either they're really badly advised on what numbers they think they're going to do and the money they're going to make, or they're fully in control and realise that, we can still make money even if we get the minimal of pay-per-view buys and we can still, put on content sort of thing. So I don't think they're ill-advised and they're obviously not stupid. So for them to still be doing pay-per-view after Quill and after the first Eubank fight, then they're obviously making money and they're obviously making some sort of success out of it. Otherwise, they wouldn't continue to do it. So, they're obviously fully prepared and fully confident that they're going to hit the sort of numbers they need to make it worth their while and to pay their fighters. Agree.
160 of you guys watching live. Less than half of you have hit the thumbs up. So help us out and click that button now. Jet, you've been quiet on this topic, mate. What's your take on the whole YouTube pay-per-view, late night Box Nation pay-per-view? What's going to be a success? What's going to be a flop?
To be honest, I think they're all going to be a flop. Sorry to be Debbie Downer, but YouTube, obviously, you guys brought up some good points about being accessible, but I don't think the average sort of person is going to be wanting to fork out money to watch it on YouTube when it'll be on, you know, online probably a few hours later or the next day after. So that's kind of, you know, a disadvantage there. The ITV is just, I think Jay, what he said was kind of succinct. You know, the first fight probably shouldn't have been, but Groves versus Eubank probably should have been a pay-per-view if so that fight does become made and both guys come through their opponents.
Isn't it disappointing, Jet, that Usyk Huck is being shown on a delay? Not because we necessarily need to watch it live, but just as a sort of sign of commitment. It's a bit frustrating, I think.
Yeah, I think maybe the handlers maybe think that, you know, that the fight itself isn't going to be the most entertaining and they expect Usyk to kind of just get a wide points decision and they think Marco Huck is, you know, way past it, which he probably is. But, you know, yeah, it isn't, you know, if they're giving priority to other fighters and they're giving pay-per-view to other fighters and making other fights pay-per-view, then they should be showing a live broadcast. It's only fair, I think. But, you know, I guess this is how they make their money.
Definitely, definitely. Well, of the four, what do you think will do the highest buys, Jet?
It's difficult. I probably have to go. It depends. Are you talking UK, GGG, Canelo, or globally? Or for all of them? UK. I think Eubank will probably do the most, to be honest. You know, he's such a big name. The amount of people that talk about Eubank Jr. to me is outrageous. You know, I get every other day I speak to someone about boxing, they talk about Eubank Jr. So, yeah, I'd probably have to go Eubank. I would say Canelo GGG, but I just think it's so late early in the morning, late at night, that I don't think people will actually wake up and watch it regardless of how good the fight is. And I know Canelo's a big star, but in the UK, I haven't heard many people talk about Canelo as much as someone like a Eubank. But yeah, there's flaws to every one of the pay-per-views, let's just put it that way.
You know what? I completely agree, Jet. Someone came up to me the other day, one of my friends. He doesn't know that I do the channel. He kind of knows I've got an interest in boxing, but I don't think he knows I'm a proper fan. And he said, do you know what? I think that Eubank will fight Anthony Joshua, and I think he might have to knock him out. And I sort of said, oh, well, the thing in boxing is you have weight classes, and Eubank and Joshua are quite a few weight classes apart, so it's probably not a fight that will ever happen. And this guy just looked at me like a moron, smiled knowingly, and informed me, you know, when you've been watching the sport for a while, this sort of stuff comes around every so often, and you know, I should keep my eyes peeled for it. Well, I just think Eubank is a bit of a sensation among the market, and I can guarantee not a single one of his fans will have even heard of Yildirim, most likely. But I think he may be the most commercially successful in the UK. I do believe that.
Well, here, so like the thing is though, Gossip, could Eubank land his big left hand? You know, is there a chance he could land that power punch?
Yeah.
Has he got power? You know, I think there is. He has power. Like
that left hand is so powerful. I once saw a light welterweight getting stopped on his feet. You know, having been hit by that punch in one of Eubank's early fights.
Well, here, lads, there's a lot of boxing on this weekend, and we spent like a half an hour talking about fucking pay-per-view.
Is that indicating that you want to move on to next weekend's
Yeah.
boxing?
I know, like which pay-per-view you can do the most. Are we turning into the fucking Boxing Voice? Is that what we've turned into? Fuck that.
Sadly, we don't get as many views as those guys.
Ever. Like that.
Let's go on to next week's boxing. Not just
good timing.
Tom has rammed it down our neck, but also because Tom Benavidez, one of your favourite fighters. Jet, some flyweights for you to enjoy. And Jay, the start of the Super 8. Tom, let's start with you, mate. What are you most looking forward to this weekend?
Well, you know what, lads? I'm kind of I'm just getting hyped. Started to get super hyped for GGG versus versus Canelo. So that kind of is like the only fight I want to talk about. And I know I'm a week early, so I'll shut up. But I'm looking forward to David Benavidez. He is pound for pound #1 fighter, best fighter in the world. Looking forward to seeing him absolutely spank this Ronald Gavril, who I've never heard or seen before. The Usyk Hook is a reasonable fight. But I suppose all the top fights this weekend are the Superfly, the trio over in, I think it's in LA. But so they're the fights. I was just looking at the odds on those fights. It has Estrada a 4-6 favorite against Quadras. I think Quadras is good value. I don't know what Jet thinks about that.
Yeah, I think Quadras is actually live enough. I make Quadras a favorite, to be honest.
Yeah, so the bookies have him an outsider. He's 6-4, and Estrada is 4-6 favorite.
I think Estrada's a bit small for 115 as well. He's recently moved up. This is actually his first fight at super flyweight, so I think he's a bit small. I think him and Chocolatito are both a bit small for height-wise, especially for 115 pounds. So that'd be a good bet.
Yeah, exactly my thoughts.
Something like that.
But somebody I think might have saying that Quadras was bad in his last. He didn't look great in his last fight, which I didn't see. The one against David Carmona.
He didn't look obviously the best, but I thought he did all right. I mean, you know, you're only as good as your last performance. But I think this obviously is a big fight for him. It's a WBC final eliminator, a chance to regain his belt. So I think he'll turn up in good shape. He's quite big for 115 pounds actually. So maybe the weight, maybe didn't, come in, maybe didn't weigh in properly or something like that. But yeah, I'd actually make Quadras a small favourite. Estrada is good. He does bring the pressure, but he's there. He's there to be beat. I think he's there to be hit. And Quadras, he's not the most sort of slick fighter. It will be a bit of a tear up. I think the bigger man, he'd probably be the bigger. He probably rehydrates more as well. So. In the clinch and on the inside, I think he'll be a lot more effective than Juan Francisco Estrada.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see what odds you get on that, because I thought Quadras bet Roman Gonzalez in their fight. I thought he was a little bit unlucky. I thought he boxed better than him. I think just Gonzalez is getting old and he's just too small at this weight class. Yeah. So I'm just trying to see what odds you get on Quadras by points. There's no real odds out there.
I think really Gonzalez is fighting Rungvisai in a rematch, and who's the other one? Inoue is fighting Neves. So I think Inoue is the best of the lot, to be honest. I think he's the best at that weight class. And I think, I know someone like Gossip isn't really high on him, but Kao Yafai is pretty good. I think, he will give a few problems to someone like Gonzalez just due to sheer height. He's massive for the weight. And I think he can box a little bit as well. So, he's another one to watch out for. But I think he's the best at 115 pounds.
What about, do you think about your man, was Axel Wangek? He's 3-1 against Gonzalez again.
Who, Rungvisai?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good to see the return of a pound-for-pound top 100 fighter, Roman Gonzalez, this week. Taking on my man Sriskat Rungvisai. I see that as a 50-50, I guess, Tom.
I kind of thinking similar, the thing is, Gonzalez will probably be more wary of getting cut and trying to avoid the clashing of heads. So he might be able to, I think he'll probably end up being able to box him. But, your man is for Rungvisai, 3-1 is, I don't know. I think there could be value in that, because Gonzalez took a hell of a beating in that last fight, and that guy is a fucking tank for super flyweight. Like, he looks like, I don't know, he nearly looks like a lightweight in that ring.
Yeah, he's certainly has a huge size advantage over Roman Gonzalez, I guess. Yeah, is the idea that Gonzalez will win and then face the winner of Estrada Quadras?
Yeah, obviously the rematch is for the WBC belt, and the Quadras versus Estrada fight is a final eliminator for obviously the winner. I've heard rumors that Gonzalez actually wants to fight Inoue, but I think that'd be a terrible decision because I think Inoue would probably blast him out, to be honest. And Gonzalez is a good fighter, but he's there to be hit. Inoue's footwork is very, very slick. He punches hard, and he's got a good skill set. So I think, you know, if he does fight him, he said he wants a lot of money. He said he wants, you know, a couple of $1 million, dollars even, to fight Estrada. So now it's going to be enforced on him versus Quadras. So yeah, let's see what happens. But you know, I'm not confident picking Gonzalez in this fight. You know, the Rungvisai is a you know, he surprised a lot of us, but he's a tank. He comes forward, he throws a lot of punches, brings the pressure. So yeah, Gonzalez might have a tough night's work again. He might win, but he might have a tough night's work, really, really hard night's work again.
Yeah. What about Usyk Huck? Are we sort of all confidently thinking an Usyk's point win? Any chance of an upset? Huck looked like a completely shot fighter to me against Bradis.
Usyk points, wide points all day.
Yeah, I agree, mate. Anyone else?
I think Huck needs to roll back the years really for that one, doesn't he? Really roll back the years. I think it's a changing of the guard fight, and Huck would have to pull out a massive performance really to win that one, because Usyk does look very, very, very good. I'm with Tom on Irish Tom with Benavidez. It's just, yeah, he's going to become the youngest super middleweight champion at 20. I think he's 21, isn't he? I think. Really good fighter. But Gavrill's a Mayweather fighter coming off four knockouts. He tends to throw a lot of looping hooks, tends to open himself up a little bit too much. He likes to let his hands go, so I think we'll see a really good fight, a real action fight, to be honest, because the way Benavidez uses his range, he's a big guy, and the way, I mean, you watch him against Medina, he was just like phenomenal, just absolutely phenomenal. It was like 7-punch combinations and all of that. So, but I think it'll end, you know, probably 4th, 5th, and it will be a real. I think it'll be a real punch up, a real one for the spectator.
Do you know what's great as well is like about Benavidez? For us over here, I don't know if he's had much exposure on American TV on the way up, but it's like, you know, this idea of like wanting to see all these next gen things. But like, do you know what's better? Is like when you go and see the guy in his first meaningful fight and he's like a fucking superstar, and you're like, where the fuck did this guy come from? You know, that's amazing. Like when I saw Erickson Lublin the last time, although I had seen him, but I wasn't really paying attention. I saw him the last time. I was like, who the fuck is this guy? You know, I'm not even trying to take the piss out of Conor McGregor. I was like, oh my God. I was like, this guy is, you know, I'd heard his name, but like this guy is the stone cold nuts. Like, you know, so there's a lot to be said for not seeing all these pathetic, you know, development fights too. A hell of a lot to be said for it. The other thing I'd say is you can get 6-4 on Usyk by decision. Is that good value?
Yeah.
Usyk knockout.
2-3.
2-3.
4-6 versus, and 6-4 for the knockout.
4-6 and 6-4. Yeah.
Hook is a tough.
I'd probably go with points, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's good.
That seems like.
So I think he's going to do well to get rid of him. You know, for a knockout, he's tough, really tough, Huck, and he's been with some good people. You know, he's on a decline, obviously, but you know, he's had some big tests and been mainly, you know, he's lost the big test, but you know, coming off a loss to Bradis as well. I think he could take it all the way. I think it's a Usyk win, but you know, it's not going to be an easy night for him, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think Usyk's got a very high KO ratio, but I think his power is slightly overstated. I don't think he'll be one of the biggest punchers Huck's been with. I mean, let's not forget Huck went the distance with Povetkin, didn't he, up at heavyweight? You know, he's fought guys like he's fought all sorts of names, and the who's who of the cruiserweight division. So, Yeah, my suspicion is it goes the distance, definitely. It's for maybe a bit of value there, Tom. Okay,
I concur.
Brings me to the end of the topics that I had written down. Unless anyone had anything else to say about next week's fights.
I think we should have a special GGG versus Canelo session, starter session.
Go on, man. You set us rolling, mate.
Right. What do people? Who are people picking? And okay, here's a question for you: who are people picking, and what percentages are you giving each fighter?
Oh.
I think it's the closest thing you'll ever see to a 50-50. I really don't have a strong pick. I could happily pick either guy here. I will caveat this in that I may well change my mind between now and next week. But if you put a gun to my head right this second, I'd go Canelo.
Okay, and here's a kind of a secondary part of that is like that when we're making our pick, we're not including the bad judging that might be in Canelo's favor. So who do we think should win, given the performance as well? Okay. That makes sense.
I would probably go Triple G.
And percentages?
If you said it was a completely neutral set of judges, I'd probably go 55-45 Triple G.
Very interesting. And okay, Jay, what about you?
Me, I'll go for Golovkin for this one. To be honest, I think Canelo has took this fight at the time he wanted to take it. I think they believe that Golovkin's on a downward spiral after his fight against Jacobs, and I think Golovkin has really got the bit between his teeth on this one and really wants it. And I think that geezer will die in the ring before he loses that fight. And I'm definitely going for Golovkin, but it is really tight. And even though Canelo's only had one defeat, it was a very long time ago, and it was against an excellent boxer. So if it was percentage wise, it would be 60-40 for me to Golovkin.
Okay, Jeff, what do you reckon?
It's close, man. It's a really, really close fight. I think it'll be one of those fights maybe that GGG probably wins. Very close fight, but Canelo will probably get it on the scorecard or something like that. So if you had a gun to my head, I'd probably pick Canelo, but it's not a confident pick. Very, very, it's a very close fight. I'll probably end up changing my mind, but I think it'll go something like that. GGG might sneak a win, but Canelo will probably win it on the scorecards.
Well, remember what we were saying is like not with non-corrupt
with
judges.
Neutral judges, probably GGG, like 7-5. I think it'll go, something like that. But if it's neutral,
and what
judges,
percentage?
55%, 45.
Jet and I sound like we're on exactly the same page, but Tom,
mate, I was talking to my cousin about it, and I was just like, if there are obviously the judges and they're in Canelo's golden boy and Oscar's pockets, then there's no way that Golovkin's going to win the fight. People are saying, oh, well, he got a robbery against Jacobs. No, it was a close fight. You could argue for either guy, but, Canelo got a draw against Floyd Mayweather and barely landed a glove. So I guess that says it all. So
I think Golovkin really, really, really needs to win a minimum of 9 rounds of this fight, Tom.
Can you get knockdowns?
My guess is there won't be any knockdowns.
Seriously?
Yeah.
I think. Well, I don't know. I've been kind of going crazy the last 2 days listening to and searching out stuff to listen to in this fight. But
Tom, have you seen the Under the Lights with HBO with Max Kellerman with them? And if you watch it and you listen to Golovkin, you can just tell he really wants this, And Max Kellerman made he did a good job, and he kind of asked, like, you know, what does it mean to both fighters, you know, to Canelo. It's kind of like, well, if you lost, well, you know, that's why you've been avoiding him, etc., etc. And to Golovkin, it is like a major tipping fight for him. It is a defining fight. I think it's more of a defining fight for Triple G than it is really for Canelo. I don't know how much.
Like, what do, like, do you know, like, do people think, like, how many rounds do people think Cotto got off Canelo?
Oh.
At least 3 at the minimum.
Yeah, I'd say about 4.
Like, and do people think Golovkin's going to be able to get more rounds than Canelo? Sorry, than Cotto.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, but because I think Golovkin's very underrated in certain ways. You know, we only really think of him, even though he struggled against a good boxer, a very good underrated boxer in Jacobs. I think he's quite underrated in you know, in the way he can cut off the ring and the skill set that he has. You know, a lot of people just judge him on that knockouts. You know, and probably he faced someone against Jacob where it was a lot more of a difficult test because you had a really good boxer. And because he didn't knock him out, you know, it's kind of seen as that he's not as good as we think he is. But I think skill set has been overshadowed by his big punch.
Yeah,
like, it just seems to me that, like, it seems to me that
really good.
like I just think that Canelo or Golovkin will be able to do more than Cotto, substantially more.
Yeah,
I think he's bigger. He's got longer arms. He's got the better jab, and he can do it on the jab if he wants. Like somebody was saying, I think my Hatman was saying that Peter Fury was talking about it, and he expected like the Lemieux thing to happen. Like, you know, why would you give away your biggest asset if you got a jab like that? Why would you go in close into that range, where 3/4 range or inside range, where Canelo might have a speed advantage? Maybe a power advantage.
I was watching something with Martin Murray. I was watching something with Martin Murray, and he was discussing like him fighting Golovkin and Matthew Macklin fighting Golovkin. And Martin Murray said that Golovkin's jab is far harder than George Grove's jab, and George Grove is meant to have, you know, quite this thunderous jab, and he's a weight above. But he said Golovkin's jab is just on a different level. So I think, again, underrated, you know.
And I think, like, and Golovkin has got, like, you know, his body attack is substantial. And the thing is, you know, that if he lands his body attack, you know, I don't know, I was listening to Ingram was interviewing your man, Golovkin's trainer,
Abel Sanchez.
Abel Sanchez, that's right. And he was saying that, like, when George Groves went sparring him, George Groves kind of like tried to actually kind of start some overly hard sparring and tried to like put it on GGG, and GGG just broke his ribs.
Well, yeah, they also said, Martin Murray also said that, or Matthew Macklin said that he. No, Murray said that he put a couple of combinations when Golovkin was on the rope, and he said he sort of felt it, like Golovkin felt it. He sort of stepped back, and Martin Murray like said a few words to him to try and maybe get him rolled up. And he said he was just so cool, calm, and collected in there that he just went straight back to work again and straight in on him again. It didn't really faze him at all, you know. So he's obviously very. Yeah. When you watch him, he's very comfortable in the ring, very, very comfortable. You never really see him flustered.
Yeah, but Tom, I think it's hard to have this conversation without looking at the judging, because I think that is probably the biggest factor of this fight, isn't it? I mean, as Jet correctly said, the guy didn't land a punch on Floyd Mayweather and got given a draw.
I know that, but let's just what I'm trying to say is that, like, I think Golovkin has got, you know, I don't think Canelo's got very long arms. I don't know what the reach statistics are. If anybody can knows that. But I think Golovkin will be able to put him on the jab if he wants. And that's going to be a jab. A jab, for example, is going to be a lot better than Amir Khan's jab. And it's going to be a lot better than Liam Smith's jab. And it's going to be a lot better than Austin Trout's jab. And it's going to be a lot better than Lara's jab, probably. And if you
Irish.
Yeah.
Sorry. Canelo's reach is 70.5 inches, 179 centimeters.
And what's GGG's reach, do you know?
70 inches. So Canelo's actually got half an inch reach advantage over GGG.
Okay. That's
box rec, so it might be.
That's box rec, yeah.
Yeah.
I imagine I'd be surprised if Canelo has the same reach, but certainly he doesn't have as good a jab. Like Canelo doesn't have a good jab. It's not like it's something that stands out about Canelo's his jab. So like I think that, and there's other things like Canelo is not one of these guys who's got a great engine. Like who do we know has got a great engine? Pacquiao or somebody like that. He's not somebody with that high tempo Jeff Horn engine. He's more somebody who likes to take breaks in the fight and go to the ropes sometimes. Like the one place you cannot go to the ropes is Golovkin. Like Jacobs did it a few times and he got knocked down when it happened, or he got hurt a lot when he actually ended up getting onto the ropes. So I think the pressure and the footwork is going to put, and just the sheer size. Like I don't think Canelo's been in with anybody like the same size in the ring. So I think a lot of the attributes that GGG has are work to his favor against a guy like Canelo more than the other way around. And I think that the difficulties that, say, the person who gave GGG the hardest fight was probably Daniel Jacobs. But Jacobs is tall. He's tall and long with slick boxing skills and a good engine, and he really has a very big punch. And I think that Canelo is not fleet of foot. He can't dance. He's more an inside slipper, 3/4 range guy. Well, and he likes to counter. But the thing is, if GGG is just able to punch and keep him, just uses his jab to break him down initially, like he can take away those chances of the counter. So I don't know. Like when I think about it, I think that GGG should win. I know there's that thing with the judges, but like, you know, if he breaks him down, like I don't see Canelo not touching the canvas in this fight. I just don't see him touching the canvas at least once. So that puts him at a big disadvantage, and I don't see the opposite happening.
Canelo.
So that could be the equalizer.
I know Canelo's the guy stepping up in weight class, but I reckon Canelo might come into the ring 10, 15 pounds heavier. And I know he's not been in with a punch like Triple G, but everything I've seen from Canelo so far tells me that he's quite a durable operator himself.
Well, the only people he's really struggled with, Lara he struggled with, you know, and Trout he struggled with as well, didn't he?
Trout.
Yeah. Those people he really...
he didn't.
Then people that are a bit more square on, that are a bit more come forward, you know, he's had a lot more success. So, you know, giving Canelo on that side as a counter puncher, you know, he could have some success against Triple G. He definitely could have success against Triple G, you know.
But you're assuming...
You're
assuming that Triple G is going to come onto him. He doesn't have to step to him.
Yeah,
he can beat him on his jab.
But Triple G does have a tendency to start to progress into doing that fight, to fight in that way as the rounds go on. You know, he does like to pressure. He really does like to pressure, and that could play into. I'm just saying from both sides, but that could play into Canelo's hands, because Canelo is a very clever boxer in that sense, in a very technical counter puncher, and he doesn't really. He can fall back onto the ropes and really come back with good combinations. So, you know, for that side, for Canelo, you know, you've got to give him some sort of chance in that sense. You know, it really depends on how Golovkin really goes about the fight.
And with this judge issue, I'm sorry to keep going back to it, but this judge issue is such a big thing now in Canelo's career. I think that Team Golovkin are going to have to plan for that early on. And I doubt they're going to fight a fight which is, you know, a sort of moving, jabbing fight where you have Canelo able to come forward and, you know, Canelo throwing huge hooks and uppercuts against a back foot jab. Because if Triple G tries to put on the kind of performance that, say, Tyson Fury put on against Vladimir Klitschko, and I'm not saying that exact performance, but if the fight goes down in that manner, in this fight, the front foot fighter, Canelo, will surely get the victory.
Yeah, and I think that what makes it such a close fight. That's what makes it interesting.
But what I mean is surely GGG, knowing that, will have to adopt different tactics.
But the thing is, like, GGG is not going to play a back foot fight.
No.
You know? So he's not going to do a dance. But what he'll do is he'll just dominate on the jab. There's a difference.
So just hold the center of the ring and just stick
jab him and send him backwards with his jab. Yeah. And then take him to the ropes after he breaks him, as he breaks him down. Like, I think that Canelo will have flashes of good stuff. But the only thing is, Canelo can't afford to open up with 5-foot punch combinations with GGG, because it's one thing doing it to Amir Khan or Liam Smith. There's another thing doing it to GGG, because all he has to do is land once within that sequence, and you're in trouble. And the other thing is, Canelo doesn't have a good engine, and even 35-year-old GGG has got a better engine than Canelo, and GGG doesn't have to make that IBF check weight in the next morning. So he's not going to be. I think that'll be a big plus for GGG, not having to starve overnight. And I think it's helping him not having to train down to such a low weight to be able to make that. I think I wouldn't be surprised if they'd be a bit rejuvenated.
You don't think that Triple G has necessarily slipped then? You think that Kell Brook and Danny Jacobs fight, he's just put on slightly less technically complete performances because of the type of opposition he's been in with?
I think he has slipped, but I don't know if he has slipped enough to be beaten by Canelo. I think Canelo has a chance, and I expect GGG, if he keeps fighting top middleweights for 5 fights, that he'll get beaten. But I just think that he's favoured in this fight stylistically, and
maybe he's a certain victim of his own success, though, really, in some ways, you know, because there was a lot of pressure, you know, when you're knocking people out every fight, there's a lot of pressure on you. There's a lot of pressure of people around you saying that you're this knockout king. And so he obviously going into the Brook fight thinking, right, I'm just going to, you know, he just went at it and just went at work, because he's thinking this should not be a problem at all. He can't hurt me, so I'm going to hurt him as much as I possibly can. And maybe possibly he's gone, you know, when you're winning fight after fight after fight by knockout, you know, you're going to go in with a certain mindset for not really a plan B necessarily. So I think maybe when you fight Jacobs and then the knockout's not really coming and you're finding it a bit difficult at times, and something you've not necessarily faced in your pro career, that you know, it can affect your performance and make you look from the outside that you're not the fighter that you were. You know, and I think that has a lot to do with it, and maybe that experience could possibly have made him a more improved fighter going into the Canelo fight.
Yeah, I do think he has slipped a little bit. Look, I think he has slipped a bit, but I think that you know, it's a massive step up for Canelo. Like, if you think about it, Canelo has never, for my mind, beaten an elite fighter. He's beaten fighters that may have once been elite, but he's never beaten an elite fighter. And the ones that he has beaten that used to be elite, usually he was a much bigger man in them. So yeah. I think this is a very big step up. This is a step up to top 5 kind of pound for pound, top, you know, type-ish level. And I just think stylistically, like, I kind of expect this fight to go down like it'll be like it'll be scored like kind of like a 7-4 kind of one with the knockdown for Triple G, or an 8-3 for, you know, something like that. Or he might even stop him late. you know, I think the things that, like the Kell Brook fight is like a weird anomaly. It's kind of not even worth, like, you know, to go back and look at Willie Monroe versus GGG, and you know, when GGG didn't respect Willie Monroe, he did exactly the same failings. You've watched that fight. GGG wasn't actually that good in that fight. But you know, at times. So I think that Kell Brook sits in that kind of quality of fight. But I think with Danny Jacobs, I think Danny Jacobs just offered very different problems to GGG than say Canelo will, and you know, exposes say some of the things that maybe GGG finds more difficult. I don't think Canelo's style will happen. I don't see him knocking him out. Like if Canelo went balls to the wall for 6 rounds, you know, he might have a chance. But I can't see him doing that. And you know, Canelo is not good coming forward. He's a counter pusher. When he's looked at his worst is when he's been in against Lara and these guys where he had to stalk. He's got poor foot speed or whatever going forward. So like if GGG keeps him on a jab and he finds that he's going to have to try and slip to get in, and GGG just keeps taking like little steps back and jabbing him again or hitting him with a left hook or whatever, I just think that he'll get broke down.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll have to work out final predictions for next week's pod, and we'll have to maybe factor in the judging. So I guess that will be kind of the nature of that will kind of be a true reflection of what we actually think will happen in the fight. But yeah, it's certainly one to savour, definitely. Okay. Anyone else got anything more to add on that before we start to wrap it up, guys?
No, did anyone see Margarito against Carson Jones?
Oh God!
No, I didn't.
I did.
It's very brutal.
God.
It's just very brutal. I mean, Margarito, God, he needs to stop, and very quickly. That's all I can say about that. His eye was just, ugh. If he's ever going to see again, I'll be surprised in later life. Brutal.
Bloody hell.
But he'll probably get a title shot at some point. But I don't know.
He was fun.
He'll get
Cotto, doesn't he?
Pardon?
Yeah, maybe Cotto will indulge him for a final
This
fight.
is what they're saying, but they're thinking he won't get a license, will he? Into fight in the US because he's that far gone, and it should be Carson Jones getting the fight against Cotto.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like it. Cool, guys. Do you have anything more from yourself?
I did have one thing. I know Jay was talking about Martin Murray. Has he moved to Box Nation? Does anyone know? Because he was on the Box Nation YouTube channel, so I just assumed that he had left Eddie Hearn and Matchroom. I'm not sure anyone knows.
I don't think so. I think it's just an opportunity to do an interview, get paid for it, and same as Matthew Macklin did, just getting previous opponents, really.
Okay. And David Price pulled out of his fight on the Smith-Skoglund undercard. Also.
Yeah.
I saw that. Probably for the best, eh?
You're gutted, BG. BG, you're gutted.
Yeah.
No, you are.
BG wants to see David Price's pouring.
In the chat, which is that Carl Frampton's new trainer is Jamie Moore.
Yeah.
Not a pick for him necessarily.
That's a weird one. Very weird.
If anyone's, another thing is if anybody wants to feel eroticized, they should look at Canelo's latest picture on his Twitter account. He's looking damn good, ginger man like myself.
You've just gone too far there. You just started the line there.
Irish, you were talking
Me
about.
Me and him could have some babies. Huh?
I said, Irish, you were talking about Lubin earlier, weren't you?
I'm telling you, lubing me up,
He's got a world title
and I'll have Canelo's babies.
Lubin's got a world title shot against the younger Charlo, the 154 Charlo.
He's going to smack him around the place. Is that confirmed?
It's a triple header on Showtime. 154. Lara's defending his belt against an Olympian Gausha, undefeated. Lubin's fighting Charlo, and I think Jarrett Hurd is fighting.
What date is that, Jet?
I'm not sure. I don't know where the date is. When I find the link, I'll send it to you. But it's Showtime triple header 154 bill.
Yeah, that's great. I heard about that triple header. All right, I forgot Lubin was on it. Yeah, Lubin's the truth. Lubin and Benavides, they're the two next stars coming through.
Good stuff. Good stuff, guys. I need to wrap it up. Thanks very much for all the panelists for giving their time this evening, and thanks to everyone in the chat who's been watching all night and commenting and joining in with the show as we've been going along. Look forward to next week's show where we will do something of a Canelo Triple G special. But yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Have a good evening, and we'll be back next Wednesday at the normal time.
Happy Wednesday.
Viva McGregor for Paul.
Ciao.
Oh yeah, let's not forget poor old Paul.
Paul will be back next week, guys. So maybe we can do a bit of a McGregor recap with Paul as well. Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.